The dust swirled across the parched main street of Julian, California, as Gabrielle Ross clutched her worn valise to her chest, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her stomach not just from hunger, but from the overwhelming sensation that she'd made a terrible mistake coming west in 1871. Her mother's warning echoed in her mind. A woman alone has few friends and many enemies in that wild country. Gabrielle stepped off the stagecoach, her simple navy blue traveling dress now creased and stained from the grueling journey. At 21, she'd left behind everything familiar in Boston to answer an advertisement for a schoolteacher in this mining town tucked into the hills of Southern California. The frontier settlement looked nothing like the prosperous community described in the correspondence. "Madam, you best get out of the street unless you're fixin' to become acquainted with the mud," called a gruff voice. Gabrielle turned to see a weather-beaten man gesturing toward an approaching group of riders. She hurried to the boardwalk, nearly tripping on her hem as the riders thundered past, kicking up clouds of dust that settled on her already travel-worn clothes. The lead rider, a tall man with broad shoulders and a determined set to his jaw, reined his horse sharply at the sight of her. He tipped his hat slightly, revealing dark hair and eyes that seemed to take her measure in a single glance. "New arrivals should wait at the stage depot," he said, his voice carrying both authority and a hint of impatience. "Streets aren't safe when the cattle drives come through." "I'm the new schoolteacher," Gabrielle replied, lifting her chin despite her exhaustion. "I was told someone would meet me." Something shifted in the man's expression. "Miss Ross?" "Yes, Samuel Mackenzie," he said, dismounting in one fluid motion. "Town council sent me to fetch you, but we weren't expecting you until tomorrow." Gabrielle felt heat rise to her cheeks. "The stagecoach schedule changes without warning," he finished for her. "Welcome to the West, Miss Ross." Samuel Mackenzie stood a head taller than Gabrielle, his frame suggesting the strength required of men who carved their existence from this unforgiving land. His face bore the marks of sun and wind, yet his eyes held an unexpected gentleness that contrasted with his otherwise intimidating presence. "I'll take you to Mrs. Holloway's boarding house," he said, reaching for her luggage. "She's got a room prepared for you." "Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie." "Most folks just call me Sam," he said, securing her valise to his saddle. "I own the Silver Creek Ranch just outside town." As they walked together down the dusty street, Gabrielle felt the curious stares of townsfolk. Julian had been established just a few years earlier following the discovery of gold, and the town still had the raw-edged feel of a place in transition. Wooden buildings lined the main street, some newly constructed while others showed the hasty craftsmanship of the initial gold rush. "The schoolhouse is there." Sam pointed to a small, whitewashed building near the edge of town. 12 students waiting for you to start on Monday." Gabrielle swallowed hard. The building looked desperately in need of repair, with one window boarded over and the steps sagging. "I see." She felt his gaze on her face. "Not what you expected." "I'm sure it will be fine," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Mrs. Holloway's boarding house stood 2 stories tall, one of the more substantial buildings in town. The older woman who answered the door regarded Gabrielle with open curiosity. "So you're our new schoolmarm," she said, not unkindly. "You look younger than I expected." "I assure you I'm fully qualified," Gabrielle replied, suddenly self-conscious about her appearance after days of travel. "I'm sure you are, dear. Come in and get settled. You must be exhausted." Sam handed over her luggage. "Town council meeting tomorrow at noon, Miss Ross. We'd like you to attend." After he left, Mrs. Holloway showed Gabrielle to a small but clean room on the 2nd floor. "Bathrooms down the hall. Supper's at 6. Alone at last, Gabrielle sank onto the narrow bed and finally allowed her composure to crack. Tears of exhaustion and doubt spilled down her cheeks. The school looked nothing like the respectable institution she'd been led to believe awaited her. The town was rougher, smaller, and more primitive than she'd imagined. And Samuel Mackenzie, a rancher, not the educated town official she'd expected to work with, had been assigned as her contact. She moved to the small mirror above the washstand and winced at her reflection. Her chestnut hair had escaped its pins, her complexion was sallow from travel, and her eyes were rimmed with red. She'd never been a classic beauty like her sisters, but now she looked positively haggard. "What have I done?" she whispered to herself. Morning brought no relief to Gabrielle's misgivings. The boarding house dining room was filled with miners and merchants who stared openly at the newcomer as she picked at her breakfast. Mrs. Holloway kept the conversation flowing, introducing Gabrielle to her fellow boarders, two elderly sisters who worked as seamstresses, a clerk from the assayer's office, and a young widow who played piano at the town's more respectable saloon. "The town's been waiting on a proper teacher for months," Mrs. Holloway explained. "The last one only lasted 6 weeks before heading back east." Gabrielle forced a smile. "I assure you I'm made of sterner stuff." After breakfast, she decided to inspect the schoolhouse before the council meeting. The morning air was crisp, despite the promise of heat to come. Julian's elevation in the mountains meant cooler temperatures than the surrounding desert, one small mercy for which Gabrielle was grateful. The schoolhouse looked even more dilapidated in the clear morning light. She tried the door and found it unlocked. Inside, 2 rows of rough-hewn benches faced a teacher's desk that listed slightly to one side. A pot-bellied stove stood in the corner, and a cracked blackboard hung on the wall. Dust covered everything. Not much to look at, is it? Gabrielle spun around to find Sam leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed over his broad chest. He wore the same practical attire as yesterday's: sturdy trousers, cotton shirt, leather vest, and boots that had seen many miles. "I've seen worse," she lied, his mouth quirked upward. "Have you?" "Well, no," she admitted, "but I'll manage." He stepped inside, his presence somehow making the small space feel even smaller. "Town councils allocated funds for repairs. We just needed the right teacher to arrive first." "And am I the right teacher, Mr. Mackenzie?" His eyes met hers. "That remains to be seen, Miss Ross." The council meeting was held in the back room of the town's only hotel. 5 men sat around a table, including Sam. The others, a banker, the town doctor, the owner of the general store, and a silver-haired gentleman, introduced as Judge Wilcox regarded Gabrielle with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. "We're pleased to welcome you to Julian," the judge began. "Though I must say, you're younger than we anticipated." Gabrielle straightened her spine. "I'm 21 and fully qualified, having graduated from the Massachusetts State Normal School with highest honors. I've taught for 2 years in Boston." "This isn't Boston," Sam said quietly. "Our children need practical education, reading, writing, arithmetic, and skills that will serve them in this territory." "Children everywhere deserve knowledge," Gabrielle countered. "While I understand the need for practical skills, I won't limit their horizons." The storekeeper, Mr. Peterson, chuckled. "She's got spirit, I'll give her that. Spirit won't help when winter comes and the children can't get to school through 3 feet of snow," Sam said. "Then we'll ensure they have books at home," Gabrielle replied evenly. "Learning doesn't stop because of weather, Mr. Mackenzie." Sam studied her for a long moment before nodding slightly. "Fair enough." The meeting continued with discussions of the school term, Gabrielle's salary, and the repairs needed for the schoolhouse. By the end, Gabrielle felt more confident. The council members seemed genuinely committed to education, even if their vision differed somewhat from hers. As the meeting concluded, Sam approached her. "I'll bring some of my ranch hands tomorrow to start repairs on the schoolhouse. Should be ready by Monday." "Thank you," Gabrielle said. "That's very kind." "Not kindness, Miss Ross. Necessity. This town needs educated children to grow, and the children need a proper place to learn." Over the next few days, Gabrielle threw herself into preparing for the school term. She cleaned the schoolhouse thoroughly once Sam's men had repaired the broken window, sagging steps, and leaking roof. She organized the meager supply of books and created lesson plans for students ranging from 6 to 16 years old. Sam appeared periodically to check on the progress, often bringing supplies or offering practical suggestions about preparing for the mountain weather. Gabrielle found herself simultaneously irritated by his presumption and grateful for his help. "You should collect pine cones and kindling now," he advised one afternoon, watching as she arranged the student benches. "By winter, everything will be too wet to burn properly." "I'm familiar with winter, Mr. Mackenzie," she said. "Boston has snow as well." "Boston has coal deliveries and neighbors within shouting distance," he countered. "Out here, preparation means survival," Gabrielle sighed. "You think I'm hopelessly unprepared for life here?" "I think you're brave," he said, surprising her. "Foolhardy, perhaps, but brave nonetheless." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Gabrielle noticed flecks of gold in his brown irises. She looked away quickly, unsettled by the momentary connection. "The children will arrive Monday," she said, changing the subject. "I hope to make a good impression. Just be yourself, Miss Ross." Children see through pretense faster than adults. Monday arrived with cloudless skies and mild temperatures. Gabrielle dressed carefully in her best teaching dress, a modest green wool that brought out the hazel in her eyes. She'd spent extra time pinning her hair into a neat bun, and even dabbed a tiny amount of rose water on her wrists, an extravagance she usually reserved for special occasions. The children arrived in small groups: miners' children, ranchers' offspring, and the sons and daughters of the town merchants. They regarded their new teacher with undisguised curiosity as she welcomed each one by name, having memorized the school roster. "Good morning, children," she said once they were seated. "I am Miss Ross, and I'm honored to be your teacher." A small girl in the front row raised her hand immediately. "Miss Ross, why do you talk funny?" Gabrielle smiled. "I come from Boston, which is very far to the east. People there speak a little differently than people here." "Pa says Easterners are too soft for frontier life," said an older boy in the back. "Then I shall have to prove your father wrong," Gabrielle replied evenly. "Now, shall we begin with introductions?" The day passed quickly as Gabrielle assessed each child's educational level and established classroom routines. By afternoon, she felt cautiously optimistic. The children seemed eager to learn, despite their varied backgrounds and abilities. As she was locking up the schoolhouse, she noticed Sam Mackenzie leaning against a hitching post across the street, watching her. She crossed to him, curious about his presence. "Checking up on me, Mr. Mackenzie." "Just making sure the repairs are holding," he said, though his expression suggested otherwise. "The schoolhouse is perfect, thank you." He nodded toward the building. "How were they, the children?" "Wonderful," she said honestly. "Curious and lively. Most of them haven't had consistent schooling. The mining camp shifted to a proper town faster than services could keep up." Gabrielle understood the unspoken message. "I won't let them down." "See that you don't," he said, but the words held no sting. "They've been disappointed before." As autumn progressed, Gabrielle settled into life in Julian. Her students made steady progress, and she found unexpected allies among the townspeople. Mrs. Holloway became almost motherly, ensuring Gabrielle ate properly and introducing her to other women in town. The elderly seamstress sisters altered her Eastern clothes to better suit the mountain climate. She saw Sam Mackenzie regularly, as he served not only on the town council, but also as an unofficial liaison for the more distant ranching families. He would appear at the schoolhouse with books donated by a neighboring settlement or information about a new family moving to the area with school-aged children. One Friday afternoon in late October, as Gabrielle was gathering her materials, Sam arrived with a wagon. "Mr. Mackenzie, what a surprise," she said, noting that he'd traded his usual cowboy attire for a clean shirt and vest. "Town council asked me to invite you to the harvest social tomorrow," he said. "Thought I might offer you a tour of the area first if you're interested. You've been here nearly 2 months and haven't seen much beyond the town limits." Gabrielle hesitated. Propriety dictated she shouldn't accept such an invitation without a chaperone, but frontier rules were different. And she was curious about the surrounding countryside she'd glimpsed only from a distance. "That would be lovely," she said finally. "What time shall I be ready?" "9 tomorrow morning. Dress warmly, the hills can be cool this time of year." The next morning dawned clear and crisp. Gabrielle chose her sturdiest skirt and a warm jacket, pulling on the practical boots Mrs. Holloway had insisted she purchase. She braided her hair into a single plait rather than her usual teaching bun, feeling oddly nervous about the outing. Sam arrived precisely at 9, driving a well-maintained wagon drawn by 2 chestnut horses. He helped her up to the seat with a strong, steady hand. "You look prepared for an expedition," he said with approval. "I took your warning about the weather seriously," she replied. "Where are we going?" "Thought I'd show you the valley first, then up to the lookout point where you can see clear to the desert on one side and the ocean on the other if the day's clear enough." As they left town, Gabrielle was struck by the rugged beauty of the landscape. Julian sat in a small valley surrounded by pine-covered mountains, with meadows spreading below and rocky outcroppings above. The autumn colors painted the deciduous trees in brilliant hues of red and gold among the evergreens. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Different from Boston, I imagine." "Completely. Boston is all narrow streets and brick buildings with the harbor beyond. This feels wilder." "It is wild," Sam said. "That's why it matters that people like you come to places like this. Civilization follows education." Gabrielle looked at him with surprise. "That's rather progressive thinking for a rancher." A smile tugged at his mouth. "Because ranchers are supposed to be uneducated brutes." "I didn't mean. I attended 2 years at a college in St. Louis before my father died and I had to return to take over the ranch," he said. "I understand the value of education, Miss Ross." Gabrielle felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "I apologize for making assumptions." He nodded his acceptance of her apology as he guided the horses up a winding trail. "Most of the children you're teaching will stay in this area. Some will work the remaining mines, others will ranch or farm. A few might leave for bigger cities, but all of them deserve the chance to choose their path." They spent the morning exploring the valley, with Sam pointing out landmarks and sharing the brief history of the settlement. Gold had been discovered in 1869, and the town had sprung up almost overnight. Now that the initial rush was slowing, more families were putting down permanent roots. "My ranch was here before the gold strike," Sam explained as they stopped for a picnic lunch near a small creek. "My father claimed the land in '59, built it from nothing. And now it's yours," Gabrielle said, accepting the sandwich he offered. "Do you enjoy ranching?" Sam considered the question as he gazed across the landscape. "I do. There's honesty in it, hard work with visible results." The cattle either thrive or they don't. The land either produces or it doesn't. No politics or pretense. That sounds appealing after Boston society, Gabrielle admitted. You didn't fit in there, he asked with genuine curiosity. Gabrielle looked down at her hands. Not entirely. My family is respectable but not wealthy, and I was always more interested in books than balls. Their loss, Sam said simply, then changed the subject. After lunch, I'll take you up to the lookout. The view's worth the climb. The lookout point was a rocky promontory that offered a spectacular panorama. To the east, the mountains gave way to the vast desert beyond. To the west, though distant, a faint blue line suggested the Pacific Ocean. Below them, Julian looked like a child's toy town surrounded by the patchwork of forests and meadows. It's magnificent, Gabrielle breathed. Worth coming west for? Sam asked, watching her face rather than the view. Yes, she said without hesitation. Though I came for the teaching opportunity, not the scenery. Why did you really leave Boston, Gabrielle? He asked quietly, using her first name for the first time. The unexpected intimacy of the question and her name on his lips made her pause. She considered deflecting but found herself wanting to answer honestly. I wanted to matter, she said finally. In Boston, I was just one of many teachers following a prescribed curriculum in a well-established school. Here, I can make a real difference. Sam nodded as if her answer confirmed something he'd suspected. That's why most of us are here, to build something that matters. The harvest social that evening was held in the town hall, a multipurpose building that served for community gatherings, church services, and town meetings. Tables groaned under the weight of food brought by local families, and a small band of musicians played lively tunes in the corner. Gabrielle found herself warmly welcomed, no longer a curiosity but a recognized member of the community. Parents thanked her for her work with their children, and she was introduced to families who lived too far from town to attend regular social functions. Miss Ross, would you honor me with a dance? Sam appeared at her elbow as the band struck up a waltz. Gabrielle hesitated only briefly before accepting his outstretched hand. I'd be delighted, Mr. Mackenzie. As they joined the other couples on the dance floor, Gabrielle was aware of curious glances. Sam was evidently considered one of the town's most eligible bachelors, and his attention to the new schoolteacher hadn't gone unnoticed. People are watching us, she murmured as he guided her confidently through the steps. People always watch what they don't understand, he replied, his hand warm and steady against her back. And what is it they don't understand, Mr. Mackenzie? His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Why the educated Boston schoolteacher would waste her time with a frontier rancher, perhaps. Is that what I'm doing? Wasting my time? The question hung between them as they continued to dance, moving in perfect harmony despite having never danced together before. I hope not, he said finally. As autumn gave way to winter, Gabrielle found herself increasingly drawn to Sam Mackenzie. He continued to appear at the schoolhouse regularly, sometimes with practical offerings like firewood or repairs, other times with gifts for her students' handmade wooden tops for the younger children or books for the older ones. The first snow fell in early December, transforming Julian into a winter wonderland that reminded Gabrielle painfully of the Christmases she'd spent with her family in Boston. Despite her growing contentment in Julian, homesickness struck her with unexpected force. The day before the school's Christmas pageant, Gabrielle was decorating the schoolhouse when Sam arrived with a small pine tree strapped to his saddle. Thought your students might enjoy this, he said, carrying the tree inside. It's perfect, Gabrielle said, genuinely touched by his thoughtfulness. The children will be delighted. As they set up the tree in the corner of the schoolroom, Sam studied her face. "You seem sad today." "Just missing home a bit," she admitted. "Christmas was always a special time for my family." "Will you go back to visit?" Gabrielle shook her head. "The journey's too long and expensive for a brief visit. I've committed to a full year here at minimum." Sam positioned the tree in the stand he'd brought. "What traditions did your family have?" As Gabrielle described the Christmas carols, special foods, and family gatherings, she was surprised by how intently Sam listened. Most men of her acquaintance showed little interest in domestic matters. "We could incorporate some of those traditions here," he suggested. "The children would benefit from experiencing customs from other places." "That's a wonderful idea," Gabrielle said, her spirits lifting. "Perhaps we could organize a proper Christmas carol singing around town." "I'll mention it to the council," Sam promised. "Now, let's finish decorating this tree before your students arrive tomorrow and find it bare." They worked together companionably, using paper decorations the children had made and strings of dried berries Gabrielle had prepared. As Sam lifted her to place a paper star on top, his hands strong and secure around her waist, Gabrielle was acutely aware of their physical proximity and the trust it implied. "Thank you," she said softly when he set her down, not stepping away immediately. "For the tree. For making me feel less alone." Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "You're not alone in Julian, Gabrielle. Not anymore." The Christmas pageant was a resounding success, with the entire town turning out to watch the schoolchildren perform. Gabrielle had written a simple play incorporating elements of frontier life with traditional Christmas themes, and the children performed their parts with enthusiasm, if not precision. Afterward, following Sam's suggestion to the council, the townspeople gathered in the snow-covered Main Street for Christmas carols. Gabrielle found herself standing beside Sam as they sang, their voices blending in harmony. "You never mentioned you could sing," she said during a pause between songs. "You never asked," he replied with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. Later, as the gathering dispersed, Sam walked Gabrielle back to her boarding house. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliantly visible above the small town. "Will you join us for Christmas dinner at the ranch?" he asked unexpectedly. "My sister and her family will be visiting from Sacramento. I think you'd enjoy meeting them." The invitation surprised Gabrielle. Meeting his family represented a significant step beyond their friendly association. "I wouldn't want to intrude on a family gathering." "It wouldn't be an intrusion," he assured her. "Catherine asked me specifically to invite you after I mentioned you in my letters." "You write to your sister about me?" Gabrielle couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Sam looked momentarily discomfited. "You're the town's teacher. It's natural I would mention you." "Of course," Gabrielle said, though she suspected there was more to it than that. "In that case, I'd be delighted to join you for Christmas dinner." Christmas at Silver Creek Ranch revealed a side of Sam Mackenzie that Gabrielle had only glimpsed before. In his own home, surrounded by his sister Catherine, her husband Robert, and their two young children, Sam was more relaxed and open. The ranch house was larger and more comfortable than Gabrielle had expected, with solid furniture and surprisingly refined touches that spoke of a woman's influence. "My mother's things," Sam explained when he caught Gabrielle admiring a delicate china tea set. "She brought them across the country in a covered wagon. Somehow they survived when so many other things didn't." "Including her?" Gabrielle asked gently, noting the past tense. Sam nodded. "She died when I was 16. Fever took her in less than a week." "I'm so sorry." "It was a long time ago," he said, but his expression suggested the loss still affected him. Catherine tried to keep house after mother died, but she was only 14. When she married Robert 5 years ago, the house felt empty without her. So you've been alone here since then. I have a foreman and ranch hands, Sam said. But yes, essentially alone. The simple admission touched Gabrielle deeply. She understood loneliness, having felt it acutely since coming west despite the community's warm welcome. Christmas dinner was a joyous affair, with Catherine proving to be as good a cook as she was a conversationalist. She drew Gabrielle out about her life in Boston and her experiences in Julian with genuine interest. Sam writes that you've transformed the school, Catherine said as they helped clear the table while the men took the children outside to try the new sled Robert had brought. Hardly transformed, Gabrielle demurred. I've simply tried to provide a consistent education. Catherine smiled knowingly. My brother isn't given to exaggeration, Miss Ross. If he says you've made a difference, you can be sure it's true. Please call me Gabrielle. Gabrielle, then. Catherine stacked plates efficiently. I haven't seen my brother this animated in years. He's always been serious, took on too much responsibility too young after father died. But his letters since you arrived have changed. Gabrielle felt heat rise to her cheeks. Mr. Mackenzie Sam has been very helpful with the school. The town is fortunate to have his support. It's more than the school, Catherine said gently. But I won't embarrass you further. Just know that whatever impression you've made on my brother, it's been a positive one. Later, as the winter afternoon faded toward evening, Sam offered to drive Gabrielle back to town in his sleigh. The landscape glittered under the setting sun, snow transforming the familiar route into something magical. Thank you for including me today, Gabrielle said, snug under the buffalo robe Sam had tucked around her. Your family is lovely. They liked you, Sam said simply. Catherine especially. We had a nice conversation while you were outside with the children. Sam glanced at her. Should I be worried about what she told you? Gabrielle smiled. Nothing too revealing, I assure you. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the sleigh runners on snow and the horses' steady breathing. I have something for you, Sam said suddenly, reaching into his coat pocket. A Christmas gift. But I didn't bring anything for you, Gabrielle protested. Your company today was gift enough. He handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. Gabrielle unwrapped it carefully to reveal a leather-bound book of poetry. Wordsworth, she said with delight, running her fingers over the embossed cover. How did you know I admire his work? You quoted him once when we were at the lookout point, something about nature and the heart. One impulse from a vernal wood may teach you more of man, of moral evil and of good than all the sages can, Gabrielle recited from memory. That's it, Sam nodded. I saw this in a catalog from San Francisco and thought of you. The thoughtfulness of the gift, not just the book itself, but the fact that he had remembered her casual quote and ordered it specially touched Gabrielle deeply. Thank you, she said softly. It's perfect. As they approached town, the snow began falling again, large flakes drifting lazily in the twilight. Sam slowed the horses, seemingly in no hurry to end their time together. Catherine invited you to visit again before she leaves, he said. The children enjoyed meeting their teacher's teacher, as they put it. Gabrielle smiled. I'd like that. Your niece and nephew are charming. They're spoiled, Sam said, but with evident affection. Catherine and Robert can't have more children, so those two are especially precious. The simple confidence suggested a level of trust that Gabrielle hadn't expected. Thank you for sharing your family Christmas with me. Thank you for accepting, he replied. It's been the best Christmas I've had in years. As winter settled fully over Julian, Gabrielle found herself adapting to frontier life better than she'd expected. The schoolhouse remained warm thanks to regular deliveries of firewood from Sam's ranch, and attendance stayed consistent despite the weather as families prioritized their children's education. In late January, however, a blizzard struck with little warning. Gabrielle had dismissed the children early as the snow began, sending them home with instructions to review their arithmetic. By the time she finished securing the schoolhouse, the storm had intensified alarmingly. She struggled through the deepening snow toward her boarding house, the wind driving icy particles against her face with painful force. Visibility had dropped to mere feet, and Gabrielle realized with growing alarm that she'd lost her bearings in the whiteout conditions. "Miss Ross." The voice barely carried through the howling wind. Gabrielle turned toward the sound and saw a dim figure on horseback approaching. "Sam," she called back, relief flooding through her as she recognized his distinctive silhouette. He dismounted beside her, concern evident even through the swirling snow. "You shouldn't be out in this. The storm's worsening faster than anyone predicted." "I was heading to the boarding house," she explained, her teeth chattering despite her heavy coat. "It's too far in these conditions," he said decisively. "My ranch is closer than town now. You'll stay there until the storm passes." Under normal circumstances, Gabrielle would have protested the impropriety. But as the wind gusted with renewed force, nearly knocking her off her feet, survival took precedence over social conventions. Sam lifted her onto his horse with ease, then mounted behind her. His arms encircled her as he took the reins, his body sheltering her somewhat from the driving snow. "Hold on," he instructed, his mouth close to her ear. "Trust the horse, he knows the way home better than I do in this visibility." The journey to Silver Creek Ranch seemed endless, the cold seeping through Gabrielle's layers of clothing despite Sam's warmth behind her. By the time they arrived at the ranch house, she was shivering uncontrollably. Sam's foreman, Mr. Jenkins, met them at the door, his weathered face creased with concern. "Got everyone in before the worst hit," he reported. "Cattle are sheltered in the lower pasture." "Good," Sam said, helping Gabrielle dismount. Her legs buckled slightly, and he steadied her with a firm hand. "Miss Ross got caught in town. She'll be staying until the storm passes." The foreman nodded without surprise, taking the horse's reins. "I'll see to Diablo, boss. You get the lady warmed up before she freezes solid." Inside, the ranch house was blessedly warm. Sam immediately led Gabrielle to the fireplace in the main room, settling her in a chair close to the flames. "You need dry clothes," he said, assessing her condition with concern. "Wait here." He disappeared upstairs, returning moments later with a bundle of fabric. "These are Catherine's. She leaves some things here for her visits. They might be a bit large, but they're dry." Gabrielle accepted the clothes gratefully. "Where can I change?" Sam showed her to a small bedroom off the main hall. "This was my mother's sewing room. It's the warmest bedroom in the house." Once alone, Gabrielle peeled off her wet garments with trembling fingers. Catherine's dress was indeed too large, but blessedly warm and dry. She found a brush on the small dressing table and attempted to bring order to her damp hair, which had escaped its pins entirely during the journey. When she emerged, she found Sam in the kitchen, preparing coffee on the large cast iron stove. "Better?" he asked, his eyes taking in her appearance with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. "Much, thank you." She accepted the steaming mug he offered. "This is most irregular, but I'm grateful for your rescue." "Survival trumps propriety on the frontier," Sam said practically. "No one with sense would question your staying here during a blizzard. Nevertheless, I appreciate your gallantry. You risked yourself to find me." Sam's expression turned serious. "When I saw the storm worsening, I knew you'd be at the school. I couldn't leave you there alone." The simple statement held an undercurrent of emotion that made Gabrielle's heart beat faster. "How did you know I hadn't already reached the boarding house?" "I didn't," he admitted. "I checked there first. Mrs. Holloway said you hadn't returned, so I headed for the school." The thought of him searching for her through the blizzard touched Gabrielle deeply. "You're a good man, Samuel Mackenzie." "Not always," he said with a wry smile, "but I try to be." The blizzard continued through the night and into the next day. Gabrielle helped Sam prepare simple meals from the ranch's stores, and they spent the evening by the fire, Sam reading aloud from her Christmas gift of Wordsworth, while she mended a tear in Catherine's borrowed dress. The domestic scene felt both strange and oddly familiar, as though they'd spent countless evenings this way rather than their first. Gabrielle found herself stealing glances at Sam as he read, noting how the firelight softened his features and how expressive his voice became with the poetry. "You read beautifully," she commented during a pause. "Most men I know consider poetry effeminate. Most men you know haven't spent winters in isolation with only books for company," Sam replied. "Poetry speaks to something essential in the human spirit. There's nothing effeminate about that." Gabrielle smiled. "You continue to surprise me, Mr. Mackenzie." "Sam," he corrected gently. "After rescuing you from a blizzard and sharing fireside poetry, I think we can dispense with formalities." "Sam," she agreed, the single syllable feeling intimate on her tongue. As the evening grew late, the sleeping arrangements presented an inevitable awkwardness. The ranch house had several bedrooms, but only the sewing room and Sam's own room were properly heated in winter. "You'll take the sewing room," Sam said decisively. "I'll sleep by the fire." "I can't displace you from your bed," Gabrielle protested. "You're not. I often sleep downstairs when the weather's bad to keep the fire going." His tone brooked no argument. "Get some rest, Gabrielle. Tomorrow we'll see if the storm has passed." In the small bedroom, Gabrielle found herself acutely aware of Sam's presence just beyond the door. The situation was improper by Boston standards, yet felt entirely different in this context. She trusted Sam completely, not just his honor, but his fundamental goodness. Morning revealed a transformed landscape. The blizzard had ended during the night, leaving behind pristine white drifts that sparkled under a brilliant blue sky. After a simple breakfast, Sam harnessed his horses to the sleigh for the journey back to town. "The road will be passable enough with the sleigh," he said as they set out, "but it may be days before regular wagons can get through." "The children will be delighted with the snow day," Gabrielle mused, "though we'll need to extend the term to make up the lessons." "Always the teacher," Sam said with a smile. As they approached Julian, Gabrielle became increasingly aware of how her absence might be perceived. "People will talk about me staying at your ranch," she said worriedly. "Let them," Sam replied simply. "Anyone who knows either of us will understand it was necessity, not impropriety." Nevertheless, Gabrielle felt self-conscious as they drove down the main street. Several townspeople were already out clearing snow, and heads turned as the sleigh passed. Mrs. Holloway was waiting anxiously at the boarding house, relief washing over her face as Gabrielle alighted from the sleigh. "Thank the Lord you're safe," the older woman said, embracing Gabrielle warmly. "When Mr. Mackenzie came looking for you yesterday, I feared the worst." "Mr. Mackenzie rescued me from the storm," Gabrielle explained. "I stayed at his ranch until it passed." Mrs. Holloway's expression revealed no judgment, only gratitude. "That was providential. Several people got caught in that blizzard and weren't as fortunate. The Anderson boy is suffering from frostbite, and old Mr. Peterson nearly didn't make it home." The news sobered Gabrielle. Her predicament could have been far more serious without Sam's intervention. "I'll come by later to check that you're settled," Sam said as he prepared to leave. Something in his expression made Gabrielle wish they weren't standing on a public street with Mrs. Holloway watching. "Thank you again," she said, trying to convey the depth of her gratitude in those simple words. He nodded once, understanding in his eyes before driving away. As February progressed, Gabrielle found her thoughts turning increasingly toward Sam. Their shared experience during the blizzard had shifted something between them, creating an intimacy that went beyond friendship. When he appeared at school functions or town meetings, her pulse quickened traitorously, and she found herself seeking opportunities to speak with him alone. For his part, Sam seemed equally drawn to her. He began escorting her to church services on Sundays and appearing at the schoolhouse with increasing frequency, often with practical gifts: a new globe for the students, improved lamps for the dark winter afternoons, a comfortable chair to replace her wobbly stool. Tongues wagged, of course. Julian, for all its frontier roughness, maintained certain social expectations, but the majority of the town seemed to approve of the developing relationship between their schoolteacher and the respected rancher. "You've brought him out of his shell, Mrs. Holloway commented one evening as Gabrielle prepared for a community dance. "He's been too solitary since his sister married." "We're friends," Gabrielle insisted, though the words seemed inadequate for what she felt. Mrs. Holloway made a non-committal sound as she helped Gabrielle with her hair. "If you say so, dear, though friends don't usually look at each other the way you two do." The February dance was held in the town hall, decorated with paper hearts and ribbons for Valentine's Day. Gabrielle wore her best dress, a deep blue that complemented her fair complexion, and had spent extra time arranging her hair in a style more elaborate than her usual teaching bun. Sam was waiting for her at the entrance, looking handsome in a clean white shirt and dark vest. His eyes warmed appreciatively as she approached. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," Gabrielle replied, suddenly shy. "You look quite handsome yourself." Inside, the dance was already underway, with local musicians playing lively tunes and couples circling the floor. Sam led Gabrielle directly to the dancing, his hand warm against her back as they joined the waltz. "Everyone is watching us," Gabrielle murmured, acutely aware of the interested glances from the townspeople. "Let them," Sam replied with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. "I'm escorting the prettiest woman in Julian. They should be watching." Gabrielle felt her cheeks warm. "Hardly that." Sam's expression grew more serious. "You don't see yourself clearly, do you?" Before she could respond, the dance ended and they were separated by well-wishers and neighbors wanting to chat. Throughout the evening, however, Gabrielle was conscious of Sam's gaze following her, and she found herself returning to his side whenever propriety allowed. As the night grew late, Sam suggested they step outside for fresh air. The February night was cold but clear, stars brilliant above the small town. They walked a short distance from the hall, the music fading behind them. "Are you happy in Julian, Gabrielle?" Sam asked suddenly. The question surprised her. "Yes, very much so. The school is thriving and I've grown fond of the community." "And what about after your year's commitment ends? Will you stay?" Gabrielle hadn't allowed herself to think that far ahead. "I don't know," she admitted. "I came west seeking purpose and I've found it here, but Boston is still home," he finished for her. "Boston is familiar," she corrected gently. "I'm not sure it's home anymore." Sam turned to face her, his expression intense in the moonlight. "What would convince you to stay permanently?" The question hung between them, its implications clear. Gabrielle's heart raced as she considered her answer. "A compelling reason," she said finally, meeting his gaze directly. Sam took a step closer. "Would I be a compelling enough reason, Gabrielle?" "Sam, I know it's too soon," he continued quickly. "We've known each other only a few months, but I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. You bring light and learning and laughter into this town, into my life. I don't want to lose that when your term ends." Gabrielle was speechless, emotions tumbling through her: joy, uncertainty, fear, hope. "You don't need to answer now," Sam said, correctly interpreting her silence. "Just promise you'll consider the possibility of a future here. A future that includes me." "I will," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her cheek with gentle fingers. "That's all I ask for now." As spring approached, Gabrielle found herself increasingly torn. Her feelings for Sam had deepened into something she could only call love, yet doubts plagued her. Could she truly build a life in this remote frontier town? Would she eventually resent leaving behind the cultural advantages of the East? And perhaps most troublingly, was she truly the kind of woman who could be a rancher's wife? These questions consumed her thoughts as she walked alone one Sunday afternoon in early April. The weather had turned mild, wildflowers beginning to dot the meadows around Julian. She declined Sam's invitation to dinner at the ranch, claiming a headache, but in truth she needed space to think. Lost in thought, she wandered farther than intended, finding herself near a small stream that marked the boundary of town property. She sat on a fallen log, watching the clear water tumble over rocks, when the sound of approaching horses startled her. A group of riders appeared, men she recognized as miners from the outlying claims. They'd clearly been drinking, bottles passing between them as they laughed raucously. Gabrielle stood quickly, intending to return to town before they noticed her. But it was too late. "Well, if it ain't the schoolmarm," called the lead rider, a burly man named Harkins, whom Gabrielle knew by reputation as a troublemaker. "Out for a Sunday stroll all alone?" "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Gabrielle said with as much dignity as she could muster. "If you'll excuse me, I need to return to town." "No hurry, miss," Harkins said, dismounting and blocking her path. "We don't often get the pleasure of educated female company." The situation was rapidly becoming dangerous. Gabrielle glanced around, calculating her chances of outrunning them back to town. "Miss Ross is expected back for supper," came a familiar voice. "She's running late." Sam appeared on horseback at the edge of the clearing, his expression controlled but his posture radiating tension. Another man rode beside him, his foreman, Jenkins. Harkins scowled. "Mackenzie, always showing up where you're not wanted." "Miss Ross is under my protection," Sam said evenly, dismounting and moving to Gabrielle's side. "I suggest you boys continue on your way." "Your protection, huh?" Harkins sneered. "That what they're calling it these days? Heard she spent the night at your ranch during the blizzard." "Must have been mighty cozy." Sam's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "That's enough, Harkins. Move along before this becomes something you'll regret." The tension crackled between the men. Gabrielle held her breath, acutely aware that the situation could explode into violence at any moment. Finally, one of the other miners spoke up. "Come on, Harkins, leave the teacher be. We got better things to do." After a tense moment, Harkins shrugged elaborately. "Sure thing. Didn't mean no harm, Miss Ross, just being friendly." The miners mounted up and rode off, though not without a parting glare from Harkins. Once they were out of sight, Gabrielle released the breath she'd been holding. "Are you all right?" Sam asked, his voice gentle now as he examined her face. "Yes, thanks to your timely arrival." She looked between him and Jenkins. "How did you find me?" "Mrs. Holloway mentioned you'd gone walking," Sam explained. "When you didn't return by late afternoon, I grew concerned. Jenkins and I were searching different paths when we heard voices." The concern in his eyes touched her deeply. "I'm sorry to have worried you. I lost track of time." "No harm done," he assured her, "but perhaps you shouldn't walk alone outside town, especially on Sundays when the miners come in." Gabrielle bristled slightly at the suggestion. "I'm not accustomed to limiting my movements because of ill-mannered men." "This isn't Boston, Gabrielle," Sam reminded her. "The frontier has different dangers." She recognized the truth in his words, even as she chafed at the restrictions they implied. "Thank you for coming to my aid." "Both of you," she added, including Jenkins in her gratitude. "Boss has been fretting about you all afternoon," Jenkins said with a knowing smile. "Never seen him so worked up over a woman before." "That'll do, Jenkins," Sam said, shooting his foreman a warning look. "I should head back," Gabrielle said, suddenly eager to escape the awkwardness. "I'll escort you," Sam insisted, helping her mount his horse while he walked alongside. Jenkins tactfully rode ahead, giving them privacy. They walked in silence for a time, Gabrielle processing the afternoon's events and Sam seemingly lost in his own thoughts. "I meant what I said before," he said finally, "about you being under my protection. I appreciate that, though I've always prided myself on my independence." Sam looked up at her, his expression earnest. "Independence and protection aren't mutually exclusive, Gabrielle. Everyone needs someone watching over them occasionally. Even you," she challenged gently. "Especially me," he admitted with a wry smile. "I've been alone too long." "It's not good for anyone." The simple confession resonated with Gabrielle. She'd come west partly to escape the suffocating social expectations of Boston, yet found herself longing for the connection Sam offered. "Sam," she began hesitantly, "about your question about giving me a reason to stay in Julian." He stopped walking, his hand reaching up to cover hers on the reins. "Have you been thinking about it?" "Constantly," she admitted, "but I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of not being enough," she whispered, the admission painful. "I'm not the kind of woman men write poems about. I'm not the beauty my sisters are. I'm bookish and opinionated and entirely unsuited to being a rancher's wife." Sam's expression softened. "Is that what you think I want? Some idealized frontier woman who knows cattle and never questions my decisions? Isn't it?" "No," he shook his head emphatically. "I want you, Gabrielle, your intelligence, your strength, your kindness, everything that makes you who you are." Tears pricked at Gabrielle's eyes. "I'm not pretty enough for someone like you." The words escaped before she could stop them, revealing her deepest insecurity. Sam's eyes widened in genuine surprise. "Not pretty enough?" He shook his head in disbelief. "Gabrielle Ross, you're perfect to me." The simple declaration, spoken with such sincerity, broke something open inside her. Tears spilled down her cheeks as years of comparing herself to others and finding herself wanting washed through her. Sam reached up and gently lifted her from the horse, setting her on her feet before him. His hands cradled her face with infinite tenderness as he wiped away her tears with his thumbs. "I love you," he said quietly, "not some imagined ideal. You." Gabrielle looked into his eyes and saw nothing but truth there. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have since that day at the lookout point." The smile that lit Sam's face was radiant. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, and when she didn't, he kissed her with exquisite gentleness. The kiss was brief but perfect, a promise and a beginning. When they parted, Gabrielle felt as though something fundamental had shifted within her, not just her feelings for Sam, but her understanding of herself. "Does this mean you'll stay in Julian?" Sam asked, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. "Yes," Gabrielle replied without hesitation. "This is where I belong now." Their courtship through spring and early summer became the talk of Julian. Sam called formally at the boarding house 3 evenings a week, took Gabrielle to church on Sundays, and escorted her to community functions with proud attentiveness. For her part, Gabrielle bloomed under his admiration, growing more confident and settled in her role both as teacher and as a woman in love. In late May, as the school term neared its end, Sam proposed properly, with a ring that had belonged to his mother and his father's blessing inscribed in the family Bible. "I can't offer you the cultural advantages of Boston," he said as they sat on the porch of the boarding house, "but I can promise you a life of purpose and partnership. We'll build something meaningful together, Gabrielle. And our children will have the best of both worlds, your education and my practical knowledge." "Our children," Gabrielle repeated softly, the future suddenly vivid in her imagination. "I'd like that very much." They were married on a perfect July day in 1872, with the entire town in attendance. Catherine came from Sacramento with her family, and to Gabrielle's delight, her parents and one of her sisters made the journey from Boston after receiving Sam's letter and train tickets. "He's not what I expected for you," Gabrielle's mother confided the night before the wedding. "But I can see how happy he makes you. Your father and I worried when you came west, but now I understand why you needed to make this journey." The wedding itself was simple but beautiful, held in the meadow where Sam had first told Gabrielle he loved her. She wore a dress of cream-colored silk that Catherine had helped her select, and carried wildflowers gathered by her students that morning. Judge Wilcox performed the ceremony, his voice carrying across the assembled townspeople as Sam and Gabrielle exchanged vows they had written themselves. "Gabrielle," Sam said, holding her hands in his, "when you first arrived in Julian, you brought light and learning to a place that needed both. You've taught me to see beauty in poetry and possibility in education. I promise to honor your independence while offering my protection, to respect your wisdom while sharing my experience, and to love you completely for all our days." Tears filled Gabrielle's eyes as she spoke her own vows. "Sam, you showed me that strength can be gentle and that love doesn't demand perfection. You've helped me find home in a place I never expected and purpose in a life I couldn't have imagined. I promise to walk beside you through whatever challenges we face, to build our future with courage and commitment, and to love you with my whole heart for as long as we both shall live." As Judge Wilcox pronounced them husband and wife, cheers erupted from the gathered community. Sam kissed his bride with a tenderness that belied the passion Gabrielle knew lay beneath, and she responded with a promise of her own that the journey they were beginning would be as rewarding as the one that had brought them together. Their life together began in earnest as summer turned to fall. Gabrielle continued teaching, now riding to school each day from the ranch rather than walking from the boarding house. Evenings were spent in comfortable companionship, sharing books and conversation, planning improvements to both the ranch and the school. When winter came again, Gabrielle found the season transformed by the warmth of shared experience. The blizzards that had once frightened her now meant cozy days by the fire. The isolation that might have been lonely was instead intimate, and the challenges of frontier life became opportunities for partnership rather than obstacles to overcome. By spring, Gabrielle had news that completed their happiness. Their first child would arrive in late autumn, a new beginning as the year drew to its close. "Are you happy?" Sam asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and crimson. His hand rested gently on her still flat stomach, wonder in his touch. Gabrielle covered his hand with hers, thinking of the journey that had brought her from Boston to this moment, the fears she'd overcome, the love she'd found, the life they were building together. "Perfectly," she said, and knew it was true. Years passed, each one bringing new joys and challenges to the Mackenzie family. Gabrielle continued teaching until their third child was born, then established a lending library in town that grew to become a cultural center for Julian and surrounding communities. Sam expanded the ranch operations, implementing innovative techniques he and Gabrielle researched together. Their children, 2 boys and 2 girls, grew strong and intelligent, benefiting from both parents' complementary strengths. Education remained paramount in their household, with books lining the walls Sam built and conversations ranging from cattle breeding to classic literature around their dinner table. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1897, the town of Julian honored them with a celebration that recognized their contributions to the community. The schoolhouse, now a proper building with multiple classrooms, bore a plaque acknowledging Gabrielle's foundational work, while the town hall displayed a tribute to Sam's years of service on the council and as unofficial mediator in local disputes. That evening, alone after the festivities, they sat in their familiar positions on the porch of the home they'd expanded and improved over the years. Gray streaked Sam's dark hair now, and laugh lines framed Gabrielle's eyes, but the love between them remained as vital as ever. "Would you change anything?" Sam asked, his hand finding hers in a gesture as natural as breathing. "If you could go back to that first day in Julian, knowing what you know now." Gabrielle considered the question, thinking of the young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach with trepidation and determination. How far she had come from the teacher who worried she wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, strong enough for the challenges ahead. "Not a single thing," she replied, squeezing his hand. "Every doubt, every fear, every moment of uncertainty led us here, and here is exactly where I want to be." Sam raised her hand to his lips in a gesture of reverence that still made her heart quicken after all their years together. "You're still perfect to me, Gabrielle Mackenzie. You always will be." In the twilight of their anniversary day, with memories of their past surrounding them and promise of their future stretching before them, Gabrielle knew that the journey west had been more than a change of location. It had been a journey to herself, to the woman she was meant to become, and to the love that had been waiting for her in a frontier town called Julian.